Hey there, viewers, and welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at flushing the cooling system on this. It's either 2000 or 2001 Buick LeSabre with the 3.8 liter in it. Don't know how long the coolant's been in there. Looks like there's some residue, some buildup, and things like that behind the radiator cap. We'll see if we can't get that all cleaned out and kind of what we need to do. How we're going to do this, we're not going to do the traditional dump and fill that, or spill and fill, whatever you want to call it, that a lot of folks do at home. We're going to use a Robinair CoolXchange. I can do a coolant flush on a typical vehicle in probably about 10 minutes if I'm, the coolant's mixed up. I'm not talking about it or anything like that. So it's a pretty economical service. If you're looking at maybe being employed in a quick lube, sort of place where they do coolant exchange, you can have a lot of different flavors of coolant mixed up, ready to go for these newer cars, G40, G05, whatever these vehicles spec. This one is Cool. So we'll go through what you need to do to load up this machine. A lot of the coolant flush machines are about the same. This procedure will be the same on, gosh, virtually every single car that you want to use this machine on. So let's take a look at what we need to do. So I got the coolant flush machine out. Self-contained, you need to hook it up to an air source to make it operate. Spin it around. You'll notice that I've got two tanks on this machine. They're both empty. So we'll probably just grab this one and we'll mix our Cool. All right, so this step's pretty easy. I went to our local O'Reilly's, not a sponsor of the show, of course, and grab me some Cool. I believe the Prestone is officially licensed by GM, if that matters to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dump in the entire, I buy the concentrate because I think it's kind of silly to pay for water. If you have crappy tap water, it's probably worth your time to buy distilled. This is pretty clean tap water. I'm going to just use tap water for this. So I'm going to dump in both containers, and then I'm going to make about 55–60% mix for this car. Its cooling system capacity is not 4 gallons, so we should have some left over that I'll refill one of these containers up and just label it 50/50 for topping off cooling systems at a later date. I'm going to add about 1.25 gallons, maybe 1.5 gallons of water to this. If you're into the ratios, your quantities are very clearly measured on the side and of the tank, and on the back of the container they give you kind of a neat mix ratio of how much quarts of antifreeze coolant to how many quarts of water. But what we're going to do, find my coolant refractometer somewhere around here. I'll be back. We're just going to absolutely make sure that we have the appropriate mix ratio. I'm going to use this refractometer. And we're going to guarantee that we're putting the correct strength of coolant in this car. So we're going to pull a little sample. We're just going to tip the jug, stick our pipette in there, and then we will place, wow, I see somebody left coolant in that last. Place that on that blue window, flick the lid closed, and whoever uses last has really bad eyesight. Looking at about 40, 42, 41, let's call it 40 below zero. If I check the back of my container, 34 is 50%, so I'm at about my 55-ish % that we were discussing earlier. leave the cap off. The tank that I'm drawing coolant from just lets it vent, seems to fill a little bit faster. You can buy multiple tanks for this if you want Ford coolant or Dodge. I think they're doing Dodges or Dexcool even, whatever. And you can keep these pre-mixed on your shelf to save time. Next step is we're going to purge the old coolant. I used a green, just a standard 3-year green in this machine last. So we're going to purge that out. We're going to get this into straight Dexcool so we're not, you know, mixing the chemical cocktail, you know, in the customer's car. Obviously, if you're not changing the type of coolant in your machine, this step is completely optional. So I can see the green in the hose. We did green last, so we're going to grab this black hose. Okay. And I'm going to put the fill hose into it, and that into a waste container, and I'm going to turn this to exchange and exchange. And then I'm just going to open until you can see green in the hose. Should be sucking up our Dexcool pretty soon here. Anyway, so we're ready to purge out the green. We got a kinked line. So we'll just run this until we get good orange. Okay, and then we'll turn off the flow. You see how that works. To keep it from drizzling all over, I break that vacuum just like that. Alright folks, okay, so this car is going to be really easy. All I'm looking for is easy access, and this upper radiator hose is wicked easy to get to. It's just chilling right here. So what we're going to do with the flush machine, this is the beauty of this machine, is I'm going to drain the radiator down using the vacuum function of the machine just as best I can, so I don't spill quite so much when I take this upper radiator hose off. Then we're going to put an adapter onto the car and an adapter in this existing radiator hose, and that's where our coolant flush is actually going to take place from. Okay, engine's cold. If the engine is hot, here's a little trick you can do. Right here is the recovery tank hose. It goes from the radiator cap to the bottle. You can vacuum on that if you got a hot engine, and it'll pull the pressure out of the radiator without you having to do any additional steps. Another nice feature on this machine. So we're going to take the pressure cap off and get where you can get a little bit better view. Go back into our toolbox and take our clear hose, and we're going to put an attachment in it, and we're going to go to vacuum. And we're going to vac out. Ooh, I must have a plug filter. See how slow that's going. Oh yeah. Okay, we've got about what we're going to get. We don't want to damage the radiator. Our next step is going to be to remove, sorry if that light's a little harsh, kind of working with what we got here. We'll remove this upper radiator hose, back that clamp down. You are going to need that hose clamp. Sometimes these will lock. There we go. And we'll just pull that hose. We'll get our vacuum up in here. try to spill a little less. Okay, so we only spilled a couple of drops. We'll make sure to wash that off. Turn the machine off. Then we're going to find an adapter hose like this one. You just assemble them out of the kit that the machine came with. So this is obviously way too big of a hose. So what we'll do is we'll unscrew that and we'll swap it. You can see it, the adapters are stepped. I'm going to adapt over to a little bit of a smaller hose. Just actually probably better make sure that that fits onto the motor. Oh, beautifully. I need another hose clamp. Looks like I got one here. So we'll install that. We'll install it onto the neck. Clock these clamps correctly so we can get a good bite on them. Hopefully this shows up right on the camera. I don't know if you can see that or not. Kind of what we're doing. If you've ever changed a radiator hose, you kind of have an idea of what we're doing here. So that's too small of a hose clamp, of course. I don't know who used this machine last. It wasn't me. I keep everything that the car needs in this kit, in the toolbox on the back of the machine. So I'm not constantly running. I even keep the screwdrivers that you need. So you're not just constantly running all over the place to get your stuff. Okay, so I've got one adapter installed on the car. We're going to put our second adapter. This hose got some crusties in it. Our second adapter, this should be easy. Into that radiator hose, unsqueeze our hose clamp. Okay, kind of put him back the way he was. There's the unsqueeze operation. Some of these clamps got a lock on them. It's kind of nice. So we're ready to attach our flush machine at this point. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to vac out the coolant recovery tank. This saves you time in having to remove it from the vehicle. You can flush it out with water if you need to, let the machine back it up, all that good stuff. This one's actually fairly clean, and we're good to go. Next, we're going to put the radiator cap on, all the way. And I'm going to take this pair of pinchers and we're going to pinch off this coolant recovery, because what this system is going to do, or what the Robinair is actually going to do, is fill it under a vacuum, and any vacuum in the system is going to be relieved by that radiator cap. So we clog up that recovery line, or surge tank, whatever you want to call it. Basically, we want to be able to pull a vacuum on this system without that cap releasing it. Your next step is going to be to identify which way to hook up the flush machine. And you can see our thermostat housing is right here. So we're actually going to flow fresh coolant into the thermostat. Now normally hot coolant comes out of the thermostat this way. So what that's going to do is prevent any coolant flow, which would be bad. So we're actually going to use the pressure from the machine to push the thermostat open, because we're going to put cold coolant into this engine. So what you need to do is actually really simple on this car. We're going to hook our black hose up here, and we are going to hook our recovery up here. Okay, at this point, you can see that the machine is clearly hooked up to the vehicle. It's really just two hoses that you're intercepting the coolant flow through the top radiator hose. Pretty simple. The recovery tank's vacked out on that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look up the spec on ALLDATA, which is 10 quarts for this engine, so 2.5 gallons. We're going to put virtually all of the coolant that we mixed, previously into this car. I'm going to save a little bit to refill the recovery tank, top off the radiator, things like that. What I'm going to do now is go to vacuum and vacuum. And I'm going to put a little bit of a vacuum on this system and just make sure that it actually holds that vacuum. You'll see the topper or the lower radiator hose will collapse. It's starting to draw a little bit of coolant out. Gauge is at 0. And really I'm just checking to see if I have any leaks at this point. You could go with pressure. That's probably the preferred way to do it. I'm going to put about 11 pounds of pressure on it, maybe 12. So we're basically filling this car with air as we speak. Reminding you not to go too high because you've pinched off the outlet from the radiator cap. So the radiator cap's no longer capable of bypassing any pressure if you go too high. So I'm going to turn this to hold and do a quick visual check, make sure nothing's bubbling. If nothing's bubbling, then we've got a good seal and everything. If you don't have a good seal, all this thing's going to do is suck the entire engine full of air, which defeats the purpose of using the coolant flush machine. So you're basically wasting all of your coolant at that point. So my gauge is holding like super steady. I'm happy with it. Let's go ahead and do the exchange. All right, so we're ready to do the exchange. You're looking at the front of the machine. It's pretty much a 3-control machine, which is the beauty of it. Has some instructions here if you get confused. But we're on pressure test mode, pressurized pressure test. I've already pressured it, and we're on the hold, so you can see that that's doing what it needs to. Don't exceed the rating of your cap. I keep that babe locked. We're gonna go ahead and vacuum that down. You can see our pressure goes away. And then that's already at exchange. And then I'll go ahead and activate the pump and we'll run our 2.5 gallons pretty close of fluid, which we can observe on the back of the machine. Okay, the exchange is taking place. Fresh coolant is coming out of the machine and it's going in through the upper radiator hose. It's pushing the thermostat open. Used coolant is being displaced through the engine block and it's coming out here. It's getting displaced into the recovery tank or the waste tank on this machine, which is self-contained, so that makes this super easy. We can go till the color improves, but I'm just going to go by quantity. I have put about 3/4 of a gallon into this car. It pumps pretty dang quick. And we'll just let that go until our capacity has been done. Okay, I've got a little shy of a gallon. I just wanted to kind of recap a little bit what I'm doing. I ran the engine for a minute just to make sure that the block could get flushed good as well as the radiator. So that way we're not just doing the radiator. That's your choice if you want. What I'm going to do at this point is, because I'm getting a little bit of air in the system, we've done almost our complete capacity, is I am going to disconnect the outlet hose, in other words the vacuum side, and then I'm going to put the car all back together the way that it is. This is just the last little bit of capacity, and then I'm going to refill the engine through the top of the block. So if there's any air pockets, they'll get pushed out and burped, so that some of these cars are really hard to burp the air out of. It's just a strategy that I found. It keeps your coolant level better maintained. I'll give it back to the customer with it full hot, and 2 days later it might be at the add. It kind of helps prevent that sort of stuff from happening. I think it just means you're going to do a little bit better job. So let's take a look. So I'm disconnecting the vacuum and come back over on this side, unpinch my coolant recovery line. You can hear it bled off the last of the vacuum. I'm going to remove the radiator cap, and then we are going to fill the system still until my radiator gets pretty dang full. So we'll just turn the machine back on to exchange. And we can modulate the fill with this blue valve. We can shut it off, we can turn it on. And here's my radiator getting full. Everything's nice. There's the last little bit of air. I'll let you guys see what's going on my radiator. So I'll fill it a little more. And that just makes sure that my radiator is full, my engine is full, and you know, nothing's gonna be running with no coolant. All right, our next step is to put the car back exactly the way that it was before you started working on it. So that's gonna include taking our adapter off, which is gonna leak a little bit, unfortunately, but oh well. We'll wash the engine off when we're done. We'll give it a rinse. So there's that little guy, and we're gonna do our hose clamp. Hopefully he can lock back into place. Maybe, kinda, not really. Sometimes the lock works, sometimes the lock doesn't work. Nope. Okay, well, we can do this without the lock. Kind of use my clamp to hold the hose. Put the radiator hose back on the car. I always like to line up my clamp in the exact spot that it was prior. Gives it that I didn't touch it sort of look. Give it the jiggle. All right, so the car is back the way we found it. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna top off the radiator and we're gonna top off the coolant recovery tank. So I'm just gonna put my adapter just off to the side for now. I'm gonna start the engine, make sure everything's out of the belts, everything looks to be good. I'll notice my radiator level is a little bit low, so I'm just going to top off my radiator, put my machine to exchange. Okay, my radiator is nice and full. That's probably going to spill on the ground. Top off my coolant recovery tank. I go for the full hot. All I'm going to do now is put my two caps back on. Put my radiator cap on. Tighten it up good. I'm going to shut the engine off and rinse. I'm not going to spray the whole motor, but I'm going to spray my coolant mess before this engine gets too hot. Then I'm going to let it fully warm up, make sure there's no leaks, and then by the time it cools down, it'll draw any needed coolant out of the recovery bottle. Basically, at this point, we're done. All right, so I've had this engine running about 30 seconds or so. I have good heat. Why? Because the block and the heads are full of coolant, which is one of the neat things about this machine. If you do the drain and spill and fill, if you want to call it that, you got to make sure you get all of that air out, and it's kind of difficult on some of these vehicles. So what I'm going to let this thing do is I'm going to let the engine fully warm up. Probably take it for a little test drive outside, clean my bay up, recycle the coolant out of the coolant flush machine. Most places take that. I don't go through that much of it, so I just keep a 55-gallon drum, fill it up, and then probably wipe the front of this car down, make it look good, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So there you got it, folks. That is a coolant flush on your 01, probably. Buick LeSabre. This process, again, it doesn't matter if you do it on a Cadillac, on a Chevrolet. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of cars at multiple buildings even with that Robinair machine. It really is a nice machine. It's reliable. The price is right. With what a lot of shops charge for coolant flush, you should be able to make the money back that you paid for that machine in virtually no time. So I've had great reliability with them. It's probably a little much unless you you know, have a lot of cars at home. So anyway, if you enjoyed what we did here, leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up for our channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thanks for watching.